So we're coming off 2 days in which you've heard a lot about dismal problems and disagreements and possible ideas and a world of tragedy, interest, and even conflict. And I've always thought differently about all of these things. Conflict, for example, I have my own kind of Zen approach to that. I believe that before you have a conflict with someone, first walk a mile in their shoes. And that way, when you have the conflict, you'll be a mile away. And you'll have their shoes. So as I look to everything that's been said over the last 2 days and all the choices in front of us, I try to figure out what are the win-win-win-win-win scenarios in everything. I've never thought normally about just about anything, and I really attribute that to the good graces of my background. I was brought up from a very early age, the age of 2.5, in foster homes in Brooklyn, New York. And I attribute everything I am today to what I experienced then. Because just as you heard about traveling to other countries to witness other cultures, every time I went from one foster home into another, I learned that a few miles away from where I just lived was a whole other reality. In one home, I was taught, this is how you cook spaghetti, this is the proper bedtime, this is how you observe this holiday. And a few years later, I would be told by someone else, oh, no, this is how you cook spaghetti. This is the proper bedtime. This is how you observe this holiday. And a few years later, it was a whole other set of rules. So I learned very, very early in life that there is no one reality, that everybody sees things and has their own laws through their own eyes. And when you come to that understanding very early in life, you're very lucky, because most of you have grown up with one set of parents who taught you what they believed to be true, and you spent the rest of your life either on a psychiatrist's couch or with trainers trying to undo all those tapes. My tapes were undone at a very early age. So I've always seen things very differently, and I continue to see things very differently. I thought, for example, and I made the comment backstage, that in one presentation we totally applauded the idea that cultures should be so different and we should preserve those different cultures, only to applaud a few minutes later at the idea that we will spread the technology that will allow everybody to learn the same way in the entire world all together. Do you see the contradiction in that? And yet we are attracted to both of those and applaud both of those. So understand that in the end, there is no absolute. We're all kind of, on our own in thinking about what could be, what is right, and what do we want to do to not only perhaps change the world or make it a better place, but just finish off the business that our lives are about. In order to do what I do effectively, I have to come to objectivity. And that's why I can observe these things the way I do. You cannot see the future if you are not objective, because you keep tending to define it in your own terms, with your own biases. You keep wanting to discount all that information that contradicts what you think should be, and only find those things that confirm what you believe. Yet in order to understand the future, you have to get rid of that and come to objectivity. And I've been doing this work for 40 years. For 40 years, I have been studying the future, and I can tell you that the hard thing is not seeing the future, it's coming to objectivity. And I work at it every day, and I'm still not there. So if I try to explain to you that what your children and grandchildren will have as their future is not what yours was about, please don't judge what I say. Please don't think this is awful or this is great. I always say that when I give a talk, it's a Rorschach test. Some people come over to me afterwards when I talk about the profound changes ahead, and they say, oh my God, this is awful. And others say, this is exhilarating. It's not about what I'm telling you, it's about the way you're receiving it. So try and be objective when you understand that your world was not your ancestors' world, and your children and grandchildren's world is not yours. Okay? So if I'm going to talk about where we're going over the next 10 or 15 years, I could actually cite hundreds of discontinuities that are making this future so different from what we ever experienced before in history. But I'm going to just do 15 and make them as fast as I can because we don't have a lot of time together. 1, the majority of people on Earth now live in cities. That means that when we look at issues about the ability to grow food in the future, why are we still looking at solutions that only deal with rural or suburban land use or spread, when we've already heard and we know that in the future, urban agriculture will become much more important, and we have to add rooftops to arable land? We've got to think differently now about what the world means when we live in cities. Secondly, nanotechnology is going to reshape every aspect of biology and physics and materials and energy. What is nano? You've all heard the word. Do you know what it means? Nano means billionths of. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter. But in an age of quantum physics, something at the molecular level, which is a nanometer, is not all that small because quantum is subatomic. So we already have what we call MEMS, micro-electromechanical devices, that are basically robots, nanobots that we program to do work for us, and they're already climbing up bloodstreams and the concrete of nuclear reactors to detect tiny cracks. The world of tomorrow for your grandchildren will be a world of nanotechnology. Materials will not be the same. Understandings of the marriage and the confluence of technologies and science will be very different from the silos that we grew up with as we learned these things. 3, new space telescopes are penetrating secret parts of the light spectrum out there in the universe that we don't understand. We don't understand the properties of these parts of the spectrum. We don't understand how to harness their special gifts, but we will. At some point we will, because humans only see a very tiny bit of the light spectrum, and there is so much else out there that we don't yet understand. Quantum physics, 4, is telling us that time is not linear. Just as aboriginal species dream, quantum physicists are telling us that perhaps what they believe is absolutely so. Quantum physics tells us that time travels in waves, in cycles, can turn back on itself, and that there is, in the end, no difference between past, present, and future, and they can converge. That's a very interesting world that your grandchildren will learn about that was not part of what you understood. 5, the largest and fastest growing demographic in the world today, non-carbon life forms. Those are machines and systems and programs that are working for us, making decisions for us. They are increasingly employed, and they're increasingly consuming. This is nothing absolutely new. If you had a car, you couldn't go out and buy any tire you wanted. You had to buy the tire that fit the car. But now, your grandchild has a Barbie doll that is connected in many ways up with many other Barbie dolls in virtual worlds or actually, and that Barbie doll is deciding with the other Barbie dolls what dress it wants for Christmas. And then that child tells its mother or you, this is what I want for Christmas because Barbie told me. And so not only are we advancing in the world of things connected to other things, but we have to understand that even in the world of work in the future, we will have smart machines working with smart people, and we will have smart people working with dumb machines, and stupid machines working with stupid people, and every combination out there. And the interesting thing is that it's IT that hires the non-carbon life forms, not HR. So the world of our grandchildren will be somehow coming to grips with life and work and entertainment and even love, and we'll get into that a little bit later, in the world of non-carbon life forms. 6, intermarriage is changing the face of peoples and nations. In the United States, 6 to 10% of our own population cannot claim an ethnic or racial pure origin. 7, the industrial world is aging. About 10 years ago, Italy became the first country in global history to have more people over the age of 60 than under 20, followed shortly thereafter by Germany, Greece, Turkey, Belgium, the Netherlands, all of Asia. Japan is the oldest nation on earth. China is aging significantly. There are only 4 fully industrialized nations that have youth replacement populations for their aging stock. The United States is one, thanks to immigration. France joined the club 2 years ago, and that's because the majority of births in France now are Muslim, as they are in Holland, and the other 2 countries that have youth replacement rates are Iceland and New Zealand, and that's because there's nothing else to do there. 8, currencies are evolving significantly. And I just addressed a group of financial executives, some of the top in the world, a few weeks ago, and their job was to talk about capitalism 2020, and all they could do was be fixated on the financial crisis of last year and the year before. And I was incensed, because 2020 is not 2009. It's 11 years from now, and a lot will be different. I asked them 2 questions, and none of them could get them right. The first one was, what is the second largest currency in circulation in the world beyond the dollar? Not one of them could answer it correctly. It's points. And the second question was, what is the currency that is most challenging China today? And the answer is virtual currency. That currency which is born of and used in the virtual world. 9, women's global economic power today exceeds that of China and India combined. So all that we talk about focusing on China and India and China and India, and here we have more than half of the globe's population that is still not totally economically enfranchised. 10, we're heading into a future that may well be determined by a country, a region, and a religion in combination. We call it the Chim-Hispanic world. China, Muslim, and Hispanic. And we have to learn how to get accustomed to that new world. Because that leads us into number 11. We're seeing a new Silk Road, the North and West being bypassed increasingly by the South and East. And our rules, our norms and expectations will be different. 12, traditional class systems are eroding, mostly because of technology. In India, for example, the caste system is cracking as technology clearly makes the world available to the previous untouchables. 13, the decoding of the genome. Clearly that is going to change everything in the future. 14, wireless communications are not only changing us today, but will change the whole future in terms of how people work, socialize, entertain, and even the nature of household formation. And 15th, output is becoming and will become far more important than input in terms of what we have to focus on. When we think about how many hours do people work and where, we have to think really about a verflex world where people can work anywhere at any time. When we think about the efficiencies in healthcare, we have to switch that to the efficacies, what really works and for whom. When we think about what is design, we think about things that are designed for those people who are fit, and that's the input, when in fact in output, it turns out that we are all physically challenged, 100%. If you add up all of those people who've ever been pregnant, those with carpal tunnel syndrome, tennis elbow, runner's knee, migraine headaches, back pains, depression, anorexia, dyspepsia, stress, you wind up with 100% of the population of the globe being somehow physically challenged, and we know that when you design for the physically challenged, you design for everyone. Those of us who are women absolutely know that, because we know that as we travel and we're in airports and we have luggage, you have to be a moron not to use the handicap stall, because you can't get into those others with your luggage, and if you do, you ain't ever getting out again. We understand food is a problem. We've heard about that, but what if we switched that out and we said it's the output, not the input? Suppose it's not about food. Suppose it's about nutrition. Well, nutrition can be approached in a whole other way, and perhaps a lot less expensively than food itself. And then we wage war in order to solve problems. Wouldn't it be interesting if we try to figure out how to wage peace? What would that look like? What would it look like if we took delivery systems that carried destructive material, and inside of them we put nutrition, and had those land 1 foot from their target halfway around the world. So if we think differently about these things, and I always have, I know that we all can come up with amazing solutions all the time. We have 8 new growth areas of opportunity coming up ahead of us in a new, disruptive, very different economy that's emerging. They're all about space, inner space. The mapping of the human brain will change everything. One of the things we know now is that the brain develops most of its connections most quickly before the age of 3. When I was a child, if somebody said coochie coochie coo to me 3 times a day, it was a lot of stimulation. My son had a mobile in his crib, and he had a toy in his stroller and a playpen. My grandnieces and nephews have 3 mobiles, bumper guards that honk and squeak and change color. Their strollers weigh 450 pounds with toys, and they don't stay in a playpen. Oh no, the entire house and car are filled with distractions. At the age of 6 months, they have toy telephones. 9 months, they have toy computers. A year and a half, they have a real computer, and they're accessing porn sites. And at the age of 5, we send them into the same school system that our great-great-great-grandparents went to. And when they cannot focus on that slow, verbal pace of change, instead of fundamentally changing the education system, we drug the kids. So, we're going to map the brain. We're going to look at outer space as a major growth area. We're going to microspace as a great area. We call it bang fuel, bits, atoms, antimatter, neurons, genes, frequencies, ultra and intraspectral energy and light, bang fuel. That will change so many things in the future that you heard a lot of depressive things about today. Cyberspace, more and more people are living in virtual worlds, engaging in virtual worlds, spending their lives there. Remember, don't judge this. This is their world. The leveraging of time in space, and design in space, and green to blue, green, doing green, everyone has to do. Being green is a whole process, but blue, that means putting back more than you took, and you heard several examples of that today. And last, in terms of growth, is storage space. What's going on there is that we're running out of space for our junk, running out of space for data, running out of nuclear, well, we're going to have to solve nuclear space, and so on. So, my time is up, but I want to leave you with this. John Gardner said in 1965, what we have before us are some breathtaking opportunities disguised as insoluble problems. Please understand that that is what we have in front of us. You have to approach this with optimism, not pessimism. Skepticism, fine, but optimism. Every day, you can make things happen in small ways. I remember going through my divorce. I was told I would get a lot better and a lot farther if I looked like a victim, because I was in a very abusive marriage, and I needed to look like a victim. And I said, no, I won't, because executive women are also in abusive marriages. So you can take a stand every single day for what you believe and make a change, or you can intervene in something and make a change, but just know this, every day is a gift, and when someone gives you a gift, you say thank you. So every day, you have an obligation in some way to do something to say thank you. Thank you.